Hello there, my name is Pavel Shtelmach, and now we will unveil the top news of recent days. Russia's war against Ukraine showed that the international security system does not meet the challenges of the modern world. The existing global security architecture allows the aggressor to commit crimes with absolute impunity and at the same time cynically abuse the right of veto, blocking international efforts to prevent and resolve conflicts. Ukraine calls for a thorough reform of the UN Security Council in accordance with all the challenges and realities of the modern world, including the possibility of overcoming the veto and eliminating geographical imbalances among permanent members. The Russian Federation illegally occupies the seat of the USSR in the UN and the mandate of a permanent member of the Security Council. Moreover, Russia uses the veto right most often, having used it 37 times since 1991. For example, China and USA used 15 and 18 vetoes, and from 37 Russian vetoes, 30 were since 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia.
The right of the Russian Federation to join the UN in general is also doubtful, as it failed to meet the main criteria for membership in the organization. Paragraph 1 of Article 4 of the chapter clearly states that membership in the UN is open to all peace-loving states. The actions of the Russian Federation are contrary to the concept of a peace-loving state. 3 decades of its illegal presence in the UN have been marked by wars and seizure of other countries' territories, forceful challenge of international recognized borders, and attempts to satisfy its invasive and neo-imperial ambitions. Statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
And now the issue is not only Russian aggression. On October 24th, during the open debate of the UN Security Council, the situation in Israel and the Gaza Strip, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for a condemnation of countries that arm Hamas. Hamas is an extremist group that, for its atrocities against civilians from more than 30 countries during the attack on Israel on October 7th, should be recognized as a terrorist organization at the global level. The identification of Hamas and the Palestinian issue in the Gaza Strip is manipulation. Terrorism must be destroyed and the Palestinian issue must be resolved in accordance with the principles of the international law and UN resolutions. Support for terrorism by UN member states is categorically unacceptable. The UN must condemn all those who arm, train and provide political support for terrorism. Moscow and Tehran openly supported Hamas after October 7th's attack. In addition, the possible involvement of the Russian Federation and Iran in planning an attack by militants needs to be investigated. Russia not only supports international terrorism but also generates it itself. The Wagner Group, which for a long time was a proxy instrument of Russian aggression in the world, is also a typical terrorist organization. Russia is not a peace-loving state in the sense of Article 4 of the UN Charter and openly despises the fundamental documents and principles of international law. Permanent membership of the Russian Federation in the Security Council is a farce and an insult to the UN itself. During the commemoration of the start of the anti-communist uprising in 1956 in Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban compared Hungary's membership in the EU to the Soviet occupation and domination by Moscow, comparing membership in the EU with being in the communist bloc and the Soviet occupation is inappropriate, which Josep Borrell rightly commented on, noting that no one is keeping Hungary in the EU by force.
Hungary knows a lot about Soviet occupation. Happily, Hungary knows a lot about what an occupation is. I remember Budapest 1956 with the Russian tanks in the street. I was 10 years old, 9 years old. So you must know what he's talking about.
35 years ago, it was Viktor Orban who publicly called for freedom and the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Hungary. This current pro-Moscow course is a betrayal of his own ideals. Flirting with Putin's regime could cost Hungary dearly. Moscow uses Hungary as a tool against democracy and European unity, and it can only sink the new concentration camp for Eastern Europe for its facilitation. It is not Brussels that imposes its will on Hungary, but the opposite. Viktor Orban's regime blocks European aid to Ukraine and Sweden's entry into NATO. Being under the power of Moscow during the communist era, Hungary suffered from a totalitarian regime, and its attempt to gain freedom ended in 1956 with a bloody massacre. Any analogies with a united Europe cannot withstand criticism. On the night of October 25th, as a result of the Russian attack, among other things, windows in 2 buildings of the Khmelnytsky NPP were damaged. Moscow launched another terrorist campaign aimed at destabilizing critical infrastructure in the autumn-winter period.
This strike towards the nuclear power plant is another reminder to all our partners of how important it is to strengthen Ukraine's air defense and how dangerous it can be when Russia can bypass international sanctions. Many components in the attacked drones used by Russian terrorists, as well as in their missiles, originate from various countries, various companies, including Western ones. The effectiveness of sanctions against Russia is literally a defense against terrorism.
The aggressor state is at war with the civilian population of Ukraine. Russian war criminals bombed kindergartens, maternity homes, schools and hospitals, destroying a total of nearly 120,000 civilian buildings, including the Novopost terminal near Kharkiv. Ukraine is grateful to its partners for their contribution to strengthening our air defense with modern systems like Patriot, NASAMS, SAMP-T and others, and we expect to continue cooperation in this direction. Reliable protection of the Ukrainian sky protects the lives of peaceful Ukrainians, strengthens their determination to stay in their homes and work for the development of our country. Strengthening air defense is not only a strategic necessity but also an economic expediency because it allows to reduce the destruction and accordingly the cost of restoration. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching and stay updated. Subscribe to our UATV English YouTube channel for more news from Ukraine. Your support is that really matters. Goodbye.